Bleacher Report has picked their Mount Rushmore of Heat players from the last 25 years, but were they dead wrong on who made the cut? Plus, a recent role player makes our top 25 list as we discuss Caleb Martin's incredible stint with Miami in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, join more than 17,000 everydayers and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. I have a new show for you today. We are continuing our 25 of 25 series with one of Miami's most important playoff performers of the last 10 years. We're going to talk about that in a second. But David, we haven't talked in a few days. We took a few unexpected days off from the pod, I would say, just to catch people up. You might have heard on a previous episode that my wife was pregnant. Well, she wasn't due for another week or so, but our daughter decided that she wanted to come early. So we were in the hospital on Thursday afternoon, and we were discharged this weekend, and the baby's healthy, the mom is healthy, and now we are back to podcasting in the Miami Heat offseason.
In true Heat fashion, we're not built for everybody. And she decides, you know what? I'm going to work on my own schedule. We're going to do our own thing. Hardest working, soonest born, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, all the platitudes that are a part of Heat culture. She's got it, baby. She's already part of the team. You never know. That's she could be the first female player in the
NBA. She knock on wood. I have a sneaking suspicion that this won't last. But since she was born, a Miami sports team has not lost. So she was born in the middle of the Dolphins preseason, but whatever, we're counting wins here. It's early. She was born in the fourth quarter of the Dolphins preseason win over the Jaguars. I was like, all right, that's a good sign. And the Marlins have won twice since she was born. So far undefeated.
Small sample size, but we'll take it. I'm looking forward to yet another undefeated Dolphins season, and the Canes celebrating their 5th national championship. So let's go.
Let's go. So speaking of some great moments, Bleacher Report did a Mount Rushmore of every team for the past 25 years. So they did one for the Heat. Interesting decisions, I would say. Some no-brainers, obviously. They had D-Wade on it. They have LeBron. They have Jimmy Butler. Those are no-brainers. Over the past 25 seasons. We're not talking 90s. No Tim Hardaway, no Alonzo Mourning. It's last 25 years. So they got D-Wade, they have LeBron, they have Jimmy Butler, and they have Bam Adebayo as the 4th president head on the mountain. Did they get that one right? Because I could see a few different options there.
Yeah, so do I. I think there are 2 players in particular that really stand out. The one that was most glaring to me, at least the one I thought at first, was no Chris Bosh. I mean, we're talking about a player who I was just even talking to a fan this past weekend, and his memories of Chris Bosh were that with him stretching the floor and starting at center, that it would kind of revolutionize the NBA, and it paved the way for the San Antonio Spurs to have Boris Diaw out there, for the Golden State Warriors to go with a small lineup, etc., and for every team basically having a stretch center. So all these unicorns that we have seen, especially during the late aughts or the late 20s, the late teens, that was basically born of Chris Bosh becoming, like, not the first, because obviously centers had done that prior to him, but really changing the way the game was played and having a much more mobile center, not typical of the center position up to that point in time. I mean, you think about it from just a couple of years earlier, they had started Zydrunas Ilgauskas at 7'4", and now instead they've got Chris Bosh, substantially shorter, smaller, but yet much more mobile, a great defensive player, a great shooter, etc., and somebody who evolved over the course of his tenure with Miami. Played 6 solid seasons, obviously 2 of those cut short by kidney issues, so blood clot issues, not kidney issues, sorry. And I'm just a little surprised that he was not given that kind of respect. And it kind of feels representative. And we talked about this a lot when Chris was inducted into the Hall of Fame, because I remember thinking how great it was that he was getting that recognition. And yet so many people kind of really felt lukewarm about his addition to the Basketball Hall of Fame, and kind of, he's just such an overlooked player not just because he played in Toronto and he put up incredible numbers during his Raptors career, but it's the Raptors and they don't get a lot of attention perhaps from most NBA fans, and certainly not by casual ones. And those teams didn't really win a lot or achieve a lot in terms of postseason success. So the fact that he was their best player for a number of years kind of gets overlooked. And then when he joins Miami, he instantly takes a back seat to LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and rightfully so. But he's just as vital, and in the words of Eric Spoelstra, the most crucial member of the Miami success. So
Right.
I tend to think that he's much more deserving of Bam, which isn't a knock on Bam and Adebayo. I just think that Chris is probably the most glaring name that should have been included in that Mount Rushmore.
So I have one more name that I think should have been at least in consideration and should be on the short list in any conversation about Miami's Mount Rushmore over the last 25 years. But the Bosh point is a great one. He had to be like the last one out on whoever wrote this for Bleacher Report and whoever kind of decided on this thing. He plays 6 years in Miami. Bam plays 8. And by the way, I have no problem with Bam being on this. I have zero. Like, I just, it's a little funny that you've got 2 members of the Jimmy Butler era and 2 members of the Big 3 era on Mount Rushmore, which in some sense are like those are the 2 best eras of the last 25 years. So, splitting it 50-50 does make sense. But at the same side, one of them went to 4 straight finals and won 2 championships, and the other one doesn't have a ring to show for it. So having maybe 3 from the Big 3 era and just Jimmy Butler. I mean, we call one of them the Big 3 era and we call the other one the Jimmy Butler era for a reason, right? Like, to me, those are the 2 things. And so having the Big 3 plus Jimmy Butler on Mount Rushmore makes a ton of sense. Chris Bosh made 6 straight All-Star teams. He played 6 years in Miami, made the All-Star game each of those years when he was eligible. And then Bam is a 3-time All-Star. Bam's also accomplished a ton. And Bam will probably end up on the all-time Mount Rushmore if this career on Miami's all-time Mount Rushmore. If his career keeps going in this projection, right? If he stays with the Heat and he keeps on this path, you can make there's a real strong argument that when it's all said and done, he is, by all accounts, since the start of Miami Heat history, going to end up on Miami Heat's all-time Mount Rushmore. But right now, I could definitely see it as a debate. Your Bosh point is a great one too, about how instrumental he was to the rest of the league. There is no Draymond, there is no Miles Turner, there is no Kristaps Porzingis. There is no Karl Anthony Towns. People looking for centers to shoot threes because they saw how much it opened things up for guys like D Wade and LeBron. And everybody wanted a LeBron. Everybody wanted, part of this era was that heliocentric offense with this big dominant ball handler. And the best way to set those guys up in space is to have a 5 who just gets out of the way. So much so that we saw the Rockets just get rid of Clint Capella and just play PJ Tucker. It's like, we're not even going to have a center. How's that? And that kind of starts with Chris Bosh, and not just for the NBA, but how instrumental he was to the Big 3 era too. Yes, he didn't have the big stats. He wasn't LeBron. He wasn't D Wade. He wasn't winning MVPs or whatever. But everything clicked in 2012 when Bosh moves to the 5 for that entire group, and that's huge.
And I think the fact that, and we've talked about this before, that he was always a coach's selection. And we've made this point when talking about Bam's All-Star candidacy or even Tyler's candidacy this past season. The fact that coaches around the league go, oh, no, he's somebody that we have to prepare for. Like, yeah, LeBron and Dwayne are the hammer, but you have to watch out for the screwdriver who can do it all. And that's where Chris Bosh kind of comes in. He winds up just being the guy who can accomplish so much and help.
Right. He was the rug that pulled the room together.
Yeah, nice Lebowski reference there. I just, Chris Bosh has always been one of my favorite players. I've been able to talk to him a couple of times and always appreciated just his candid approach to everything. But the fact that he was so self-aware at a moment when another star would have been like, this is what I came down here for. And he sacrificed individual success for team success and still wind up having his moments, not just in being able to change the league, but also hitting game-winning shots and being just such a big-time player in Miami's 4-year successful run there. So I think he deserves it. Now, I'm curious, who's the other player that you have there as a possible mention? I think there's actually 2 more now that I think about it, but who's the other?
Well, Mario Chalmers, obviously.
No, duh. It's the big 3-game winner. I'm surprised you didn't walk out of the
didn't lead the show.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
Sorry, baby, Goldberg. I gotta go watch Rio hit a game winner.
It's got to be Udonis Haslem.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have made the Mount Rushmore. I'm not necessarily making that argument, but when you're putting your short list of who we're going to put on this thing, just because of what he means to Heat culture and what he means to that team, any organization, any mention of the Heat history over the last 25 years, there's got to be at least a couple of paragraphs in that story about Udonis Haslem and just his overall impact. So that's the one guy. Again, I probably wouldn't have him on my Mount Rushmore, but worth a mention.
No, I think it's fair. I mean, some people have mentioned Pat Riley as a Mount Rushmore type figure, and it's like, yeah, I get it from a coaching
Right.
front office perspective. That makes a lot of sense. But Mount Rushmore is typically, I think, dedicated to players, and as well as
Did any other team have coaches on their Mount Rushmore? I didn't see the whole thing.
I didn't either. I did not either. So I don't know.
I was assuming this was just players, because if it's not just players, then Eric Spoelstra should be on this.
Yeah, like I'm wondering, like a team like the Charlotte Hornets, who makes their Mount Rushmore? You know, like they haven't had a lot of success over the.
Trey Mann had a pretty good couple of months last season. He could make it. It might be enough.
So I think you could make certainly a case for Udonis, because he's just been such a steadying force, and he's so symbolic of the team and its culture, and the fact that he worked himself on there as an undrafted free agent, had been there for 20 long seasons, contributed in a number of ways, was part of all those championship teams, is the team's leading rebounder, although we expect Bam to probably eclipse that record at some point if he decides to stay with the team.
Played like real minutes for 2 championship teams. I think people think of Udonis Haslem as just this guy who rode the bench late in his career. Yeah. No, he was a high minutes player in 2006 when they won the championship, and he was a big part of the rotation in 2012 when they won. Not to mention a team that made the finals in 2011. Like that count, those things count.
Does Shaquille O'Neal deserve any recognition? Because he had some stellar couple seasons there too. Like that 2-year stint was as good as any individual Heat player has had. And I mean, he was an MVP candidate during those 2 seasons. And we kind of tend to forget because his stint was short and he kind of burned his bridge on his way out. But he was really good during the time that he was here in Miami.
Worth a mention, but I probably wouldn't have him in my Mount Rushmore if I had to put the thing together. Once we were chiseling the rock, I don't think I'm doing his face. But all right, 25-25 is coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait around? Probably not. You moved on, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. So simple. And the shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without even missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at open.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. This is our 25 of 25 series, looking back at the top 25 Heat players of the last 25 seasons. Each episode, we'll be taking an in-depth look at every player who made the list as voted on by us and our Locked On Heat insider community through the lens of what made them a definitive part of the franchise's history. In our last episode, Caron Butler checked in at number 21. We're breaking into the top 20 now, and coming in at number 20 from North Carolina to South Beach, from two-way to near Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I don't want to give J. Cole any credit for this one. It's Caleb Martin, David.
He does. Yeah, Kel'el Martin. I mean, I know you referenced me. Went undrafted in 2019, but eventually signed with his hometown Charlotte Hornets as a free agent after the Hornets had drafted his twin brother in the second round that same year, his twin brother Cody. Caleb signed a 2-way contract with the Hornets and then spent time with between Charlotte and their G League affiliate, the Greensboro Swarm, that year, playing in 18 total games with the Hornets, having a season-high 23 points, a career high up to that point in one game versus the Atlanta Hawks. But the next season, he wound up getting even better, appearing in 53 games with the Hornets, actually playing more minutes than his brother Cody, who had been drafted by the team, but still was waived by Charlotte after they signed Kelly Oubre Jr. as a free agent. Of the waiver, Martin said this to Shams Charania back in 2023. At the time when they did it, at first, naturally, you feel some kind of way. You feel mad. The first thing I did was went to my stats and said, what made them do that? I looked at everything, looked at my efficiency, looked at my percentages, I would have waived me too. I don't blame them at that point. I was mad, and then I was real about it. With a renewed approach to improving his overall game, Martin then signed a two-way contract with the Heat in 2021. That's what you're referencing to when you say J. Cole, because it's become somewhat apocryphal that J. Cole's relationship with both Martin and assistant coach Caron Butler led to the Heat opening up a tryout for Martin. Of course, he wound up impressing, but I guess, no, that's not necessarily true, and you don't want to give J. Cole any of the credit he deserves for helping bring about Caleb Martin's career to Miami. But whatever, we'll just dismiss it, I guess. He did impress early on as a free agent. He was very athletic, constant effort, making impact plays. And that season, when Miami had the best record in the Eastern Conference, Martin emerged as a solid contributor, playing in 60 regular season games and 17 playoff games. I remember telling you that year, I don't remember. Were you covering the team at that point, or were you still at Golden State?
First year back.
Okay, that was the first year back. And I remember Caleb early on saying something about him made me watch him every time he was out there, because it seemed like every time he was on the floor, something happened. Like he was the fulcrum for something happening, whether it was a run or a big play or a turnover or an athletic baseline dunk. There was always a moment there with Caleb where he wound up impressing, and the Heat noticed. He was such a
you were on Caleb Martin early. I would give you more credit than I would give J. Cole, honestly.
I had seen him in Charlotte, and I know that there was potential there. And on top of that, from everything we saw from him in the team in those minutes, he wound up really popping. The team was so lacking in that, and somebody that was explosive and athletic, that he really wound up shining in that department.
He was just doing stuff. He does stuff, right? That's my number. It's my number one trait that I look for in basketball players. Are you doing stuff? Is stuff happening when you're out there? And
he was perfect.
I just want to hop on the J. Cole thing really quick, as I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, so I just want to get it out of the way. It's not that I'm telling it's not that I'm telling people that J. Cole had nothing to do with it. I'm just telling you the way that sports journalism works. That's a really fun hook to have included in something. But the idea, so I'm not saying that J. Cole didn't call Caron Butler and said, look at this kid who's also from my hometown in North Carolina. I'm just telling you that the most boring rapper alive right now isn't the reason why Caleb Martin signed a contract with the Miami Heat. That's not what happened. I don't know that the Miami Heat are necessarily a front office that operate their way. Is Rick Ross calling Pat Riley and saying, hey, sign so-and-so because he's from Miami? No. Like this Heat front office is listening to rappers on their...
You don't think DJ Khaled has Pat Riley's ear? I beg to differ. We saw him hug it out with Coach Spo. We know that's a man of importance in that front office. But anyway, that season, his first with Miami, he eventually was converted to a regular contract in February of that year. But after falling one win short of making the NBA Finals, the Heat kept their roster mostly intact and re-signed Martin to a 3-year deal that summer. And he kept improving, played in 71 total games, including 49 starts, often out of position, being asked to fill the team's glaring hole at power forward since P.J. Tucker had left the team that summer. Martin played solidly all year, but really responded during Miami's magical playoff run that season, averaging 12.7 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 1.6 assists in 23 games. He was instrumental in helping beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, but unfortunately struggled in the finals versus the Nuggets. Martin played the following season with Miami, but dealt with nagging injuries for most of the year. It was not quite as impactful as he'd been the previous year. And in 2024, with Martin's contract expired and amidst the growing concerns about Jimmy Butler's future in Miami, the Heat offered Martin a multi-year deal, but Martin and his agent decided to test free agency, a move that ultimately backfired as he wound up taking less money than Miami had reportedly offered him, and he signed with the rival 76ers. A year later, he was traded from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Dallas Mavericks, where he currently plays.
So in our ranking, overall, obviously, Caleb Martin comes in at 20. The highest he was rated was 18. The lowest was not ranked at all. You had him at 22. I had him at 20. So he falls right there. You and I basically have him same as 20, 22. What's the difference? So we both believe he deserves to be up here. And he really wasn't any higher than 18. So it felt like everybody kind of agreed deserves, for the most part. Some people, again, had him not ranked. But everybody pretty much agrees. Consensus on the list. One of the most important 25 players of the last 25 years of Miami Heat history, but kind of right here, right? Not he was always like the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th kind of guy on this team, depending on how well, like how many of his threes were going in and how well he was playing defense and all, and what position he was playing, right? There was some nights where he looked like the second best player on the team outside of Jimmy Butler. And there was other nights where it was like, I don't even know that he needed to be out there tonight. But for the most part, tremendous overall impact. Another one of these sort of avatars of Heat culture and the development program that has really taken hold of the last half decade or so. And an amazing success story overall. Funny way that his career ended that we'll get to here in a second, or his Heat career ended that we'll get to here in a second. But yeah, everybody pretty much agrees deserves to be on the list, but at this part of the list.
Well, he started off so slowly too, where he was just basically a backup and a kind of a role player signed to that kind of two-way contract. So imagine us talking like that about Kashad Johnson, and
Right.
maybe 2 years from now, Kashad winds up blossoming into the player that Caleb Martin was, but you're going to forget the first 2 years of his stint with Miami, which have been mostly forgettable. So kind of in that same realm, Caleb was a good player. He popped and he had his moments, but he didn't really contribute until the following season. And then from there, he had that really good run on Miami's way to the finals. And then I think, honestly, like what everybody kind of, the lingering aftertaste of Caleb's stint in Miami is that he was hurt. He really wasn't as explosive. And I think the year of just playing power forward, remember, PJ Martin leaves and you're starting Caleb at the 4. Like, he's no bigger and probably less strong than Jimmy Butler, and he's starting at the 4, having to guard all these bigger players. And he did it because he was just doing the yeoman's work, and he was expected to. And I mean, he had just gotten that big contract, and he was kind of paying it off. And so you knew that he was going to put in the time and the effort, but he just wasn't cut out for all that work, and it just took its toll on him.
It's a great point that I want to bring up here in a second, but just to remind, like, again, for every Caleb Martin, there's a Jamal Cain, there's a Josh Christopher. There's just a crazy good athlete who has the tools, just can't make it work. And Caleb Martin had the tools, and he did the work, and he made it work, and became an important part of the Heat for several seasons there. But you mentioned one of the more interesting sliding doors moments. Some of our sliding doors moments throughout the 25-25, going to be honest, not that slidey doorsy interesting, but I came up with like almost half a dozen really interesting sliding doors moments for Caleb Martin. We'll do that after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Today, August 26th, is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches for just 24 hours, so you still have time. FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions, whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off. This is your moment. Take a flyer on the MVP race. Who knows? There's so many worthy candidates out there, but if you've got a feeling about somebody and you want to take the chance, this is your time to do it. Maybe you know who's going to win the Super Bowl. It's early, obviously, but guess what? Guesses have paid off before. This could be your opportunity to win big. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is just one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Before we get to some of our categories, including the biggest what-if moments from Caleb Martin's Heat tenure, trivia. What do we got?
All right, let's see. Caleb's brother Cody also played in the NBA, but Caleb himself also played with 3 other twins during his Heat tenure. Who are they?
So Markieff Morris.
Yes, correct.
That's the easy one. 3 other twins?
Mm-hmm. You know how
in Miami?
Twins? Yep. You know how I hate twins. So
yep.
This is etched into my memory.
Who else was a twin? Wow, I can hear people screaming at me. Who else was a twin? This was supposed to be the easy one?
Yeah, I thought you'd know because we've talked to you all.
I probably would if I wasn't so sleep deprived right now.
Hey, get ready for the next 2 months, buddy. Victor Oladipo and Justin Champagnie.
That's right. All right, that was a good one. We'll see how I do on the rest of these.
Not well. Martin notoriously fell short of being named the Eastern Conference MVP in 2023. How many votes was he short by?
Quite a bit. Wasn't it like 3?
No, 1, actually. It was 1 short.
1
vote short. Yeah,
wow.
Jimmy Butler. He was that good.
Yeah.
That good. Like, it went by default to Jimmy Butler. But honestly, if you're talking about impact plays, and impact shots specifically, I don't know that anybody was better than Caleb Martin in that series.
I still think it had to be Jimmy. I tend to go on the side of just give it to the best player because none of this is happening without that player out there. But love Caleb Martin, and he's always he's the number one guy you think of when you think of like almost conference finals MVP.
You might think otherwise after this one. What did he shoot for the field during the ECF finals?
56%.
Close. 60.2% from the field and 49% from three. It's like one in, one out.
People are like,
one out.
I've heard Simmons complain about this series and be like, who's going to see Caleb Martin becoming Michael Jordan in the Eastern Conference Finals? I was like, don't sell him short.
Yeah, Jordan who? Like,
sorry, Jordan didn't average 60% from his career.
Yeah,
he's like turning into Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. What a series for him.
All right, so I got
so I love him.
All right, 0 for 3. Good job, Wes.
It's the baby's fault.
I'm gonna start blaming the baby now. All right, recurring segments. We got sliding doors moment. Is Caleb Martin jersey worthy? And then we're gonna see if he passes the Eddie Jones test here in a second. Let's start with the sliding doors moment. Like I said before we went to break there, I think this is one of the more interesting because Caleb Martin's story, as we've discussed, is so unique, right? Mm-hmm. So sliding doors moment, for people who don't know, it's a moment that could have changed the way that this player is remembered for better or for worse, or could have changed the trajectory of his career, how he left, etc. with the Miami Heat. So I had 4 that I came up with. The 2 sort of interesting, but not all that interesting. The first one was, what if Charlotte waves Cody instead of Caleb? What happens? I don't know. I don't know if anything different happens. They're twins. I have no idea. That was the first one. Who knows?
They would have taken a flyer on Cody, right? And who knows? You might have blocked
they like Cody Martin. They were looking at Cody Martin this summer. So, yeah, they probably would have just taken a flyer on Cody. Maybe the same stuff just happens. But maybe it doesn't happen. What if Jimmy Butler doesn't hurt his tailbone at the beginning of the 2022 season? And I'm not really counting this because it had been a year into Caleb's career on that two-way. He was pretty much on the roster getting minutes. But you could see there's a before Jimmy's tailbone injury at the start of that year, in late 2021, and after Jimmy Butler's tailbone injury, because he leaves the lineup and then Caleb Martin goes from like 12 minutes a game to 30. It's right there. And he captures the moment, he embraces it, and he's a part of Miami's rotation every single night after that. A no-brainer, and eventually obviously carves out a starting role that we talked about there. But that's the other. I think overall something would have happened. Eventually he would have ended up in the lineup. So I don't really count that as a sliding doors moment.
That's fair. I don't know where you're going with this, but to me, I think there's only one real sliding doors moment in his career.
What if the Heat don't resign PJ Tucker? Or what if they do resign him?
No. To me, it's what if he had just signed with the team
in 2024?
In 2024.
That's the big one I have. Yep.
Yeah, that's to me. That's it. Because you could trade Jimmy. Do you care about adding Wiggins if you already have Caleb under a relatively decent price tag? You already have Caleb. He's established. You know him. Is Andrew Wiggins the centerpiece of whatever you're getting back from Golden State? I don't know if that's the case.
I hadn't considered that angle of it. That's interesting. I mean, you might still have to take Wiggins in the trade because of the salary, but do you find another team to send Wiggins to, and does that trade get a little bit bigger, and does it look a little bit different in terms of what Miami gets back? That's really, because once you trade Jimmy, you just need somebody at that spot. And so maybe if you have Caleb Martin there, he walks into that spot. You had mentioned some of the injuries and stuff, and he obviously has not been the same since he left the Heat. Right. But he also left the Heat. And what if he's still in Miami and has sort of that institutional knowledge and doesn't sort of upend his career a little bit, or disrupt his career really, in the way that he did. So Miami, that's the big one I have. What if he just takes Miami's initial offer in 2024? So Miami offered him 5 years for $65 million that summer. He decides, I'm going to play out free agency. I think I can get more than $13 million a year, basically. And he doesn't. And he ends up settling for 4 years, 32 from Philadelphia. And that was a tough decision. And everybody around the league kind of looked at it as the way not to do free agency, essentially. And so, yeah, his career's never been this. He's been traded since then and all these things. That doesn't really have the spot that he had in Miami. That to me is the biggest what if, because he could literally still, he'd be under contract right now.
Yeah. Maybe I've just forgotten that the contract was that large, or at least the reported offer was that large. 5 years.
He said it. It's not even reported. Yeah. He said it was five for 65. Is he jersey worthy? Is this a cool jersey to own and wear to a Miami Heat game?
I'm gonna say no. Too recent. And again, it was a role player. Like 10 years from now, you're wearing a Martin jersey. Yes, now not so much.
I think if you got the Eastern Conference Finals MVP jersey patch like customized for it, and you had like a 16 Heat jersey in like black with Martin across the back, and then like a Finals MVP thing in the front, that would be cool. But I think I mostly say no. But I would go like if I saw it, I'd be like, I feel bad for you that that's your favorite Heat player, but you're also kind of a real one. So maybe I'll go slight yes on this one. The Eddie Jones test, the Eddie Jones test. If re-added to the roster in his Heat prime, would this player make the current roster better? Named after Eddie Jones because it feels like that's the kind of player he was. David, I have yes. I think this is a clear yes to me.
I think it's no.
Really?
And it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's just unfortunate because I love his impact plays, but again, like I don't know that we're talking about Caleb Martin in the same light. If that team wasn't good enough and had some great performances from Jimmy, even Kyle Lowry that first season, Bam emerging as an all-star and defensive player of the year, etc. Like to me, Martin is more just kind of symbolic of Miami's mediocre depth. More than anything else, and is he substantially better than say Jaime Jaquez or Niko Jovic?
Well, I guess it depends in the spirit of this question, right? It's if you added him in his Heat prime, would you consider that 2023 playoff run by itself his Heat prime?
No,
you wouldn't. Okay, so you just wouldn't. Okay, but that whole season, I think.
Yeah, he was great the whole season, but that was a burning flare of a performance amidst everything else.
Okay.
In the darkness of that overall.
Because I was gonna say, like we just talked about him having like Kevin Durant type of shooting numbers in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you put that on the team, then you're not even having Kevin Durant trade conversations this summer. But no, I think it's
at home.
I think it's yes because you look at the depth right now, especially after losing Haywood Highsmith. That's like fair. Caleb would play over Pelle Larsson. Like he would make them somewhat better, but I don't know that he necessarily moves the needle, which I think is really what you're saying is like he's not a needle mover necessarily unless he's playing like Kevin Durant in the Eastern Conference Finals. All right, last one here. Versus pin this player against the player who came before him and ask, did we get it right? So the player that came before Caleb Martin here at 20 was Caron Butler at number 21. I do think we got this one right. Absolutely. Given the fact that Caleb spent way more time here, made a much deeper run than Caron Butler, has real playoff moments that we can kind of talk about here. I think it's a yes.
Yeah, no doubt. I think 4 years is enough there to prove himself, and he did it at a high level during that time period too. And I think he continued to develop and he showed something. And whether you remember him from his early days or his bright spots in between or the tail end of his stint here in Miami, either way, like there's enough of a career arc there where I think he stands out over a guy who, as much as he was loved during those 2 years, he was only here for 2 years.
Well, let us know what you think in the YouTube comments. Let us know on social media. Did we get this one right? What do you think of when you think of Caleb Martin? And would you consider a 2023 playoff run the peak of his career? And if you added that team, what this would do? Let us know what you think out there on social media and in the YouTube comments. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.